situation. Always trust your gut.
Hello, my name is Chrissy Champagne. You are listening to Residue, a true crime podcast dedicated to keeping you paranoid. Residue is not just another true crime podcast, but a necessary tool for those who want to understand the dangers lurking in the real world. You are listening to episode 68. This is the story of Micah Rine Pate. As always, listener discretion is advised. As some of you may know, or not know, like myself, Michelle Trachtenberg hosted a true crime docuseries called Meet, Marry, Murder. And I binged this series last week. It's a really good show. I found it on Peacock if you want to take a look at it. But one of the stories about a woman named Micah Rine Pate really struck a chord with me. And I wanted to talk to you about that story today. Speaking as a parent, there's a quiet agony that comes when you watch your children walk towards a path that you know will hurt them. And especially when they're your adult children. They are grown now with lives of their own, but no matter how old they get, you still want to protect them, to shield them from harm. Yet with every passing day, you find yourself more and more powerless, especially when it comes to the person that they choose to love. Micah Rine had always been an intuitive, bright young woman, confident in her own skin, but recently her choices had shifted, and it all started with a guy named Thomas Pate. Thomas Pate seemed charming at first. He was the kind of person who could easily win over a room with a smile and a few well-timed compliments. But as a parent, you don't just listen to words. You see patterns, nuances, the little things that others might miss. And it wasn't that Thomas was openly abusive or cruel. That would have been easy. So this was subtle. The creeping manipulation that you notice over time. And at first, it's small things. Thomas subtly undermined Micah's confidence, making little comments that belittle her thoughts and ideas, masking them as jokes or concerns. But behind the smile, you can see the coldness in Thomas's eyes, the calculated way he had Micah wrapped around his finger. This is the nature of coercive control. It's not a crime that you can easily point to. It's not something that leaves a visible mark or a bruise. Instead, it operates behind the scenes, an invisible destroyer that erodes the very fabric of a person's independence and self-worth. It's a slow, creeping poison. And once it's in the system, it's incredibly hard to get rid of. This story captures the subtle nature of coercive control and the emotional difficulty parents face when they realize they can't control their adult children's choices, especially when it comes to their partners. The narrative also highlights how narcissism can sneak in and slowly take over someone's confidence and independence. There are some key elements of coercive control. For one, isolation. The abuser works to isolate the victim from friends, family, and all sources of support. This can involve controlling where they go, who they spend time with, and even limiting their access to transportation or communication. They want their victim to feel alone and dependent on the abuser. And of course, manipulation and gaslighting. This is when the abuser is going to use emotional manipulation to confuse, disorient the victim. They want to make the victim question their own reality, their own memories, even their own sanity. The goal is to make the victim doubt themselves, and this will make the victim more dependent on the abuser. They might also monitor the victim. The abuser might constantly monitor the victim's phone calls, text, emails, social media. They might even install tracking devices, which is scary as fuck. Demand passwords or show up unannounced to places where the victim goes. This creates a sense of surveillance that makes the victim feel like they're always being watched. There is threats, intimidation, degrading, belittling. Then there is the controlling of finances. The abuser might restrict money or even access to money, monitor spending, prevent the victim from working or earning money. Exploitation of vulnerabilities. Coercive control often targets the victim's vulnerabilities, such as emotional insecurities, past trauma, or their desire to please. The abuser may exploit these vulnerabilities to gain more control over the victim's behavior and decisions. Coercive control is an invisible but incredibly damaging force that can wear down a person's sense of identity and autonomy. The victim may not even realize this behavior as abuse, especially if the abuser is charming or manipulative in public and only displays their controlling behavior behind closed doors. It's like one of those scenarios where you're stuck in a bad situation and all your friends can see it, your family can see it, but you're so trapped on the inside of this horrid situation that you can't see from the outside. And once you break free from it and you're finally able to see, that is when you can break this cycle of brainwashing and manipulation. And to be quite honest with you guys, this is why this story struck me so hard, because I've been in this situation myself. I've been in a situation where I was being brainwashed, manipulated. I didn't understand that this was going on. I mean, everyone around me understood it. They all told me, but I just couldn't believe it. When I was finally able to step away from the situation, look at it from a different viewpoint, wow, that was just eye-opening and a really tough situation to pull yourself out of. I did get some of the greatest advice from one of my close friends. She told me, look, think of this situation as like a really scary, gross swamp that you're standing in front of. The only way to get to the other side is to walk through that swamp, but you're going to have to do it. You're going to get your ass in that water. You're going to walk yourself across to the other side. And when you're on the other side, life is going to be different. And she was right. And this is why Micah's story needs to be told over and over, because I had someone there that I confided in when I was in a situation that wasn't a very safe situation. I told friends, I told family, and people pulled me out of it. Micah didn't want to tell anyone, but her family could see that something was wrong. She didn't want to confide in friends, family, or coworkers, but everyone had a bad feeling. That's why I wanted to tell the story today, so that this is a lesson for everyone to learn. Confiding in someone close to you when you are in a toxic situation and you now realize you're in a bad situation. Confiding is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. There were moments when Micah's family, her parents, would talk to each other about this. They had noticed that something was going on with their daughter. Over time, Micah's vibrant light seemed to dim. Her laughter, she was once so full of joy, she just seemed forced and fragile to her parents. But what could they do? They couldn't control her choices no matter how much they wanted to, as much as they wanted to step in to shield her from this invisible grip that was surrounding her. They were helpless. The reality was harsh. You can't control who your adult children choose to be with. All you can do is watch and hope they'll see what you see. And this wasn't about disliking Thomas for no reason. It was about seeing the long-term consequences that could unfold. Narcissists are often masters of manipulation. They are experts in making others doubt their own perceptions. This story captures the subtle nature of coercive control and the emotional difficulty parents face when they realize they can't control their adult children's choices. Micah Rine was raised in a tight-knit religious household in the small town of Searcy, Arkansas. She led a sheltered childhood full of Sunday prayer services, church camps, and she had a people-pleasing nature that defined her. Thomas Pate would enter her life in 2003. Thomas was born and raised in a privileged environment outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and he was a self-described redneck city boy, athletic, outdoorsy, charming, but with a complicated past. Micah, a young, driven, athletic woman, falls head over heels for Thomas. They met through a mutual friend at age 19, and this is when their relationship begins. The two met at Harding University. Micah's parents hosted a Bible study in their home on every Wednesday, so Micah brings Thomas to this Bible study. And while Thomas seems like a down-to-earth Christian, there was still something that Micah's parents couldn't quite pinpoint. Micah's parents were interviewed for the show Meet, Marry, Murder and also the podcast Behind the Scenes. They spoke of Thomas and how they felt about him. There was just always an uneasiness. They couldn't quite put their fingers on it. There weren't red flags yet this early in the relationship, but a parent's intuition, something felt off. Then Micah's family goes on a ski trip, and Micah and her dad ride the ski lift together. She asked her dad if he ever sees any red flags with Thomas, please let her know. And her dad didn't really think much of that comment at that time. It wasn't until later that he realized, was she quietly asking for help? Was she quietly trying to get out of this relationship? Because it did not take very long for Thomas to propose to Micah. And now these two are young and engaged. And Thomas shares with the parents of Micah that he had made some poor choices during his high school and college years. He was drinking, he was into drugs, and Thomas was very promiscuous. And like I said, this relationship is moving fast. They're only together about a year and they're already engaged. And now, despite the concerns from her parents, Micah is determined to move forward with the marriage. And you know what? Her father, he did try to stop the wedding. Even as he was walking Micah down the aisle, he asked her, listen, do you really want to do this? And told her, we can stop this right now. But Micah said, no, we don't want to stop it. I want to marry Thomas. And she truly believed that she could make this marriage work. The couple starts a new chapter. After their wedding, the couple moves to Bartlett, Memphis, where Micah takes a job at Moga Women's Clinic. She works in labor and delivery. The transition from small town life to Memphis proves to be a huge change for Micah. Micah's colleagues at Moga notice troubling signs. Thomas doesn't allow Micah to have her friends inside of their home, and he belittles her in public, and her coworkers have witnessed this. Micah spends less time with her family. She's starting to miss holidays at home because Thomas doesn't want to visit. And when Micah does show up to family events by herself, she always has to explain to her family why Thomas didn't want to come. And it's always a simple lie, like he didn't feel good, he had to go hunting, but everyone could tell. I mean, Micah's spouse is never coming home with her. The dark side of Thomas is slowly creeping out for everyone in the family to notice. Micah's dad will tell a story about how Thomas got a new dog, sort of a little puppy, a hunting dog. And Thomas was at the family home. He had his pickup truck and he had the little puppy inside of the pickup truck in the back. And he told the puppy, "You stay here." While Thomas went down towards the lake, he was doing some stuff on his own. The puppy wanted to see him. The puppy jumped out of the back of the car, came running up to his owner, and Micah's dad explains that he saw the devil come out of Thomas at that moment. Thomas is screaming in that dog's face, in that little puppy's face. "You do what I tell you." He is screaming at a level no one has ever seen. He then picks the dog up. Now, this is a trigger warning for everyone. He picked the dog up by his ears and threw him back into the pickup truck and screamed at him to stay where he tells him to stay. This was a moment for Micah's dad. Like, oh my God, this man has a temper on him. Micah becomes worn down, emotionally drained. She is spending every waking moment trying to please Thomas while he's just belittling her, gaslighting her, hiding her from her friends. And to make matters worse, Thomas develops a drinking problem. And of course, he swears he'll stop. He will stop drinking. And you know what? Micah believes him because she wants to believe him, because she knows that she fell in love with this person. He cannot be as bad as he is displaying to her. So she says, okay, he's going to stop drinking. She thinks that they are on the right path. Micah goes home for Easter to visit her family. Of course, Thomas is not going to go with her. He does not want to go. He says he has a hunting trip planned with his buddies. He will see her when the weekend ends. So Micah goes home. And when she calls home, Thomas tells her that he's feeling sick. So to surprise him, she leaves her family early. She drives all the way back to their home in Memphis. And she's going to take care of Thomas, cook him some soup. But when she walks into the house, she catches Thomas on a phone call that sounded very intimate. And she knew right away Thomas is cheating on her. It doesn't take long for Micah to find out that Thomas had spent a weekend with another woman. This woman was from New Jersey. She was a school teacher. But Micah doesn't tell Thomas that she knows. She doesn't confront him immediately. She remains determined to make this marriage work. She also doesn't confide in her family. Right after finding out about her husband's infidelity, Micah heads home to her parents' house to celebrate her 26th birthday with her family. And she doesn't tell anyone about Thomas's affair. She never talked about her marriage problems. April 30th, 2009, the night Micah vanishes. Micah's parents receive a phone call from Thomas around 10 p.m. asking if they know where Micah is. He tells them she had gone on a run and never returned. It was late, it was dark, and it was raining hard. There was a thunderstorm. Micah also went on this run without her dog, without her keys, and without her phone. Micah's parents tell Thomas, "Call the police, Thomas. Call the police right now. We're on our way there." They drive all the way to Memphis. They get to Thomas's house, and my heart when I hear that Micah's dad used to run with her. That was something they did together. They even ran a marathon together at one point. But since Thomas told her parents that she was on a run that night, Micah's dad just starts running all the paths, all the streets that he knew that his daughter would run, because when he would visit, they would go on runs together. So he is just running through the rain. Gives me chills, trying to find any clues as to where his daughter could be. While Micah's dad is out running, her mother, Terry, is inside of the home with Thomas, and she discovers that Thomas put the trash out that day. And in the trash, there were tons of tequila bottles, just empty bottles of tequila. So Terry confronts Thomas, and Thomas lies straight to her face and says that those are not his bottles. There are people in the neighborhood who will sometimes just walk up to his garbage can and drop empty tequila bottles in. So Terry is asking Thomas, listen, did you guys have a fight? Just be honest with me. Did something happen? Did she maybe leave, go to a friend's house for the night? No, Thomas says no, they weren't fighting. She just went for a run. Detectives take Thomas in for questioning, and they are immediately suspicious of him. They say that while they were asking him questions, if they ever got towards a question that would sort of point at Thomas, he would just start dry heaving in the middle of the room and wouldn't really answer their questions. Micah has been missing 12 hours, and the entire community is searching. Micah's co-workers are out on the search. Her brother, Casey Rine, shows up. He arrives to help. They all scour the Loosahatchee Bottoms. Now, this is a remote wooded area. It's about 15 miles from Micah and Thomas's home. This crew of Micah's co-workers, her brother, community members, they search the hell out of the Loosahatchee Bottoms. There's no sign of Micah. While her friends and family are searching for her, the detectives are in the home now, going through everything, trying to find any clues as to what happened to Micah, and they discover the biggest piece of evidence that they could find. They find Micah's journal. This was a journal where she would write down all of her daily thoughts, and this is the place where she let it all out. Even though she wasn't talking to family and friends about the situation, she was writing it down. And now, this is such a unique situation because the victim has left her words behind. Now, Micah's family doesn't want to share some of the personal things that were in that journal, but they will say that there was an entry from February. And this is now April that we're in. So in February, Micah wrote about her growing concerns regarding Thomas's infidelities and all of his indiscretions. And Micah had been trying to deal with this behavior in silence. Meanwhile, Thomas, back at the police station, is breaking. He is cracking under pressure. As the interrogation continues, Thomas cannot take it anymore. Thomas fails a lie detector test, and then he asks for his father to be brought into the interrogation room. His father, Tom Pate, comes in to speak with Thomas, and in this dramatic moment, Thomas's father repeatedly demands, "Where's Micah? Tell me the truth now, son. Tell me where she is, son." There is an interrogation audio on the show Meet, Marry, Murder, where you can hear more of this conversation between Thomas and his father. And then as the detectives are just pressing Thomas for answers, as his dad is begging for him to tell the truth, the story starts to unravel. This once charming, confident man, he starts to show signs of panic, and he's making it clear that he is hiding something. In these interrogation tapes, while Thomas is speaking to his father, Tom, his father says something alluding to the fact like, "Was it an accident, Thomas? Did you have an accident?" And so Thomas confesses. He confesses that he did shoot his wife, Micah, but it was just an accident. So that's going to be his defense. He tells police that he left her in a marshy area at the Loosahatchee Bottoms. Thomas says that he took Micah to the Loosahatchee Bottoms for her birthday 2 days prior to her going missing. He said that they were going to have a fun day of target shooting for her birthday, and they were just going to let the dogs run free. And according to Thomas, on Thursday, April 30th, they went for a target session in the woods, in the swamp, but he accidentally shot Micah in the back of her head. When Micah's body is found, She is wearing no shoes, and she has on the brightest white socks that don't have even a drop of mud or dirt on them. They're not dirty at all, but she was found in the mud. Thomas claims that her boots fell off. But Micah's boss will say to police that when they found Micah's body, she was wearing the exact clothes that she had on when she was in the office that day. Everyone had just searched this area. There was no sign of Micah. And now they find her with completely clean clothes that she had on the whole day at work. So what we're trying to say here is she went to work where she's a labor delivery nurse, and then she went out target practice shooting in a marsh. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And it is very important to note that both Micah and Thomas were very good at shooting guns. Micah had target practice since she was a little kid at the church camp that she would attend. They practiced shooting guns since she was very little, and so did Thomas. He was an experienced hunter. This bullet hit Micah directly in the back of her head. And Thomas is trying to say that it was an accident? You know, the kind of accident where you accidentally shoot someone in the head, and then you go home and you call her parents and you tell them, oh my God, Micah's missing. And then you make everyone hysterical, running down paths to try to find any clue about Micah. But this was just an accident. It just gets me. I get so worked up over this whole entire situation with this man. Why didn't he call for help if it was an accident? But police are going to find evidence in this home showing signs of trouble in the marriage. They find texts from the woman in New Jersey. They find credit card charges made for slot machines in casinos and hotels where Thomas spent time with this woman from New Jersey. On May 2nd, 2009, Thomas Pate is charged with second-degree murder. He is offered a plea deal for 15 years, and the family prayed that he would just take this deal so that they could just get on with their lives, that they could start mourning the loss of their daughter, learning how to live life without Micah. But Thomas doesn't take the deal. He did not. And then Thomas and his lawyers, they enter an Alford plea. There will be no confession. He will say, I understand that the evidence is mounting. There's nothing I can do. I look guilty, and that's it. There's never a trial. He doesn't confess to anything. And, Micah's family is just relieved that this is over. Thomas Pate receives 25 years without parole. I found a clip of Thomas talking from the prison, being interviewed, being the same old narcissist who's fake crying with no tears. I think the interview is a bit infuriating, and I have it linked in my show notes if you want to take a look at it. The thing is once you come out of a relationship with a narcissist, with a gaslighter, once you pull yourself out and you're on the outside, it is really difficult for anyone to trick you again. So when I watch this video of Thomas, no, that guy's lying. The video seems to me like he knows he used to get away with a lot of shit. He used to be able to charm himself out of situations. And it is exactly like Micah's parents said. It's just something you can't really put your finger on. He's saying all the right things. He's doing all the right things, but it doesn't feel genuine. I want to leave you with something that Micah's mother said that was just so profound. She says that it wasn't bruises, it wasn't cuts. We didn't see cigarette burns. We didn't see where Micah had been hit physically, because this was emotional abuse. Thomas left scars in Micah's heart and in Micah's spirit. Everyone deserves relationships free from domestic violence. If you or anyone you know needs help, you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or text BEGIN, BEGIN, to 88788. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Residue. You know that I love you guys so much. I thank you for coming back every week. Residue is a one-woman show produced, hosted, created, edited, researched by me, Christy Champagne. If you wanted to follow me on the socials, I am on Instagram at Residue Podcast, TikTok at Residue Podcast, Facebook at Residue, a true crime podcast, and if you wanted to follow me, just hit that follow button at the top of whatever you're listening to me on right now. That way you know to meet me back here every Tuesday at midnight. And if you wanted to help out the podcast, leaving a 5-star review is the best way to show that you care. Thank you so much again for coming here every single week. And don't forget to stay safe and stay paranoid.